Hello, welcome to part 55 of Clinical Physiotherapy MCQ series. Here we gon discuss day-to-day clinical scenario with detailed explanation. Now don't waste our time, let's move to question number 271. A 76-year-old patient exhibits impaired balance. A diagnostic workup has failed to reveal any specific etiology. An initial intervention for this patient would not include Option A, limits of stability re-education including postural sway training. Option B, practice in maintenance of a wide base of support during gait and turns. Option C, sit to stand and stand to sit activity training. Option D, tandem walking and single limb stance. And the answer is Option D, tandem walking and single limb stance. Explanation for this question is, a patient with balance instability would benefit from all of the interventions except tandem walking and single limb stance. These activities are too difficult, high level, to be included in an initial training program. A significant percentage of healthy elderly are unable to stand on one leg. Now let's move to question number 272. A hospital administrator asks members of the rehabilitation department to develop a comprehensive program to help reduce the risk of low back injuries. Which of the following steps is the first step necessary to develop this program? Option A, include all employees in a lumbar extension exercise class. Option B, design a program that meets each department's functional needs. Option C, perform an ergonomic analysis on each workstation. Option D, provide pamphlets on proper body mechanics. And the answer is Option C, perform an ergonomic analysis on each workstation. Explanation for this question is, the first step in preparing any education experience is to determine what the needs of the audience are. Since prevention of low back injury is the ultimate goal, assessment of the employees' workstations is an important first step in planning the educational program. Simply instructing all employees in lumbar extension exercises is inappropriate without a thorough evaluation of their physical needs. Option 2 cannot be done unless an assessment of the functional needs has been performed. Providing pamphlets is a useful teaching adjunct but would not be the first step to prevent low back pain effectively in this population. Now let's move question number 273. A physical therapist chooses to use therapeutic ultrasound for deep heating of the quadriceps muscle. Which set of ultrasound parameters will be most effective at increasing the temperature of tissue 3.0 centimeters deep? Option A, 1.0 MHz, 1.5 watts per square centimeter, 50% duty cycle. Option B, 3.0 MHz, 1.5 watts per square centimeter, 100% duty cycle. Option C, 1.0 MHz, 1.5 watts per square centimeter, 100% duty cycle. Option D, 3.0 MHz, 1.5 watts per square centimeter, 50% duty cycle. And the answer is Option C, 1.0 MHz, 1.5 watts per square centimeter, 100% duty cycle. Explanation for this question is, 1.0 MHz, 1.5 watts per square centimeter, 100% duty cycle will be the most effective at heating this deep tissue. Now let's move to question number 274. A 38-year-old patient with spinal cord injury is being discharged home after a 2-month course of rehabilitation. In preparation for discharge, you and your team visit the home and find he has 3 standard height steps going into his home. A ramp will have to be constructed for his wheelchair. The recommended length of his ramp should be Option A, 120 inches, 10 feet. Option B, 192 inches, 16 feet. Option C, 252 inches, 21 feet. Option D, 60 inches, 5 feet. And the answer is Option C, 252 inches, 21 feet. Explanation for this question is, the architectural standard for rise of a step is 7 inches, steps may vary from 7 to 9 inches. The recommended ratio of slope to rise is 1:12, an 8% grade. For every inch of vertical rise, 12 inches of ramp will be required. A straight ramp will have to be 252 inches or 21 feet long. Now let's move to question number 275. A patient fell from a ladder landing on the left side of the trunk with immediate onset of pain over the left lower ribs. The following day, the patient reports mild lightheadedness along with severe pain over the left shoulder and left upper abdomen that increases with inhalation. Shoulder movement is mildly limited with reports of rib pain at end range. Which of the following conditions is most likely? Option A, shoulder fracture. Option B, ruptured spleen. Option C, acute cholecystitis. Option D, pulmonary embolism. And the answer is Option B, ruptured spleen. Explanation for this question is, the spleen is positioned above the stomach and under the left ribs. The spleen can rupture with trauma, but the symptoms may occur gradually from slow hemorrhage. The symptoms of a ruptured spleen include pain in the upper left abdomen and radiating to the top of the left shoulder. The pain gets worse with breathing in and then spreads quickly over the entire abdomen. If the leak of blood is gradual, symptoms may not occur until the blood supply to the body is diminished. This will result in lightheadedness, low blood pressure, blurred vision, confusion, and loss of consciousness, as the oxygen supply to the heart and brain is affected. Symptoms of a pulmonary embolus are variable but do not include referred pain to the shoulder. The presence of pain with shoulder movement at the initial injury site, the ribs, rather than the shoulder, decreases the likelihood that the shoulder itself has pathology. Also, inhalation shouldn't aggravate a shoulder fracture. Acute cholecystitis is associated with fever, chills, nausea and vomiting, tenderness on the tip of the 10th rib, and pain in the right upper quadrant and radiating into the right shoulder and between the scapulae. So, that's all for today. If you have any doubts, please comment below. I think you have learned something valuable today. See you on the next part, that's part 56. See you till then, bye bye.